The rise of scientism and intolerance. Beware the con man's game. What is science? Have you ever asked that question or truly investigated it? Science, to me, is something we all do simply by being. It's the observing and experimenting of daily life. It's the coalescing of data points, configuring of theories, and testing them out through our words and actions. We get feedback, we adjust, and grow from there. Science has no authorities. Why is this? Because when you investigate the truth, when you what you will find is that most truths are subjective and conditional. If any factor involved in the making of a truth is absent in the next round of coalescing factors, the resulting truth will not be the same. This is because life is dynamic and multifaceted. Imagine you are looking at a beautiful, straight, clear piece of glass. And from this viewpoint, you come to certain conclusions about the world you perceive. Yet it turns out that this one piece of glass is part of a magnificent prism. Even the beautiful, straight, clear piece available to your perception turns out to be multifaceted. If you change your position, your perception, you discover more that you were initially unaware of. So, in genuine science, there are no authorities because it is recognized that life is dynamic and that there is always so much more to discover. And every new discovery will change the overall picture, add more depth. New discoveries can come from anyone. No one single person or living being will experience life in exactly the same way as another. If we forget this and close ourselves off to this, we limit our understanding of life. We close ourselves off from growth and expansion of knowledge. There are overarching truths that present themselves through a preponderance of data. We can discover through exploring a particular issue from many different angles that there appear to be commonalities that appear consistent. For example, we can see that certain animals behave as predators, and this does not appear to change even when the same species lives in different environments. So, from this, we can deduce that this species is predatory or consumes other animals primarily. But the key important thing to remember is that everything is subject to change. Even truths we assume are objective and fixed. Be open to this. Simply because an animal is a predator does not imply that it will consume an animal it would consider prey. There are many cases where predatory animals befriend and care for animals they could easily eat. This opens up more knowledge about the animal. What most people seem to assume is that science is objective, unbiased, and the best way to explain our reality. What they are really talking about is the new religion, Scientism. Scientism presents this illusion of an objective reality that can be explained through controlled experiments and physical measurements. If it cannot be measured, it isn't actually real. Scientism has its very own priest class, the experts. These authorities in scientism cannot be questioned. They are purported to be much more intelligent, much more clever, the translators of scientific studies which are written in language only experts can understand. Trust them. They know what is best. It's their job. And these priests of the new religion will employ their favorite mind control mantras. Trust the science. The science says. The best available evidence says. It's too complicated to explain to you. Without being boring, in quotes, I will skip over the actual details because you are too stupid to follow along. I have spent the past 2 years looking into scientific studies published in prestigious medical journals, and I have to say this. There are so many published studies that intentionally use complicated composition in their language and presentation and purposefully give misleading titles, abstracts, and conclusions that do not actually divulge what their experiments found, with the sole purpose of manipulating perception. It is incredible. Who has the time to sift through that intentional claptrap? One quote from a mentor of mine stuck with me, and I think it is incredibly relevant here. If you cannot easily help another person to understand what it is you are explaining, then you don't really understand it. This is important. If one understands something, even a very complex matter, they should be able to convey with great skill that complex matter even to a child. Because one understands the matter so well, they can translate their knowledge in myriad ways. They can skillfully help open the door of discovery and understanding to another. Every complexity is also simple. We all have to begin somewhere, and that beginning always starts with very simple things. The complexity comes in the discovery of new angles, facets, colors, etc. Does that mean the simple beginning is lesser than the complexity that follows? No, it goes hand in hand with it. Every complexity can be understood in its simplicity as well. How can I say this? Well, because every piece of knowledge comes down to this. Does it matter to you personally? Is this knowledge useful for you? And how can you employ this knowledge in your day to day life? Turn around and reflect and see what responses or reactions that bit of data is drawing forth from you. Knowledge is simply bits of data we discover through our experiences, whether it comes from reading, research, or feedback from our senses when we speak or act. These bits of data are always uniquely perceived. We gauge what matters and what doesn't, what helps us and what doesn't. This knowledge we keep to be useful in any way has to be employed, to be lived. Knowledge can rewire our brains, create new connections as we foster certain ways of thinking more so than others. This will have a corresponding biochemical effect in the physical body, which will result in physiological effects, which will result in changes to our sensual perceptions. And this feedback will result in changes to our interactions with the environment. Those changes in interactions will then offer a feedback loop by changing the bits of data we gather, altering the cycle continuously. Now back to scientism. Scientism is greatly focused on an objective reality. It prevents different sciences and other life studies from collaborating. The focus is primarily reductionist, with many narrow viewpoints. This prevents big picture viewing that can further everyone's growth and expansion of knowledge. Anything outside the accepted narrative is ignored or destroyed. Any scientist or other expert who challenges the paradigms the priest class wishes to impose on the general public is shunned, defamed, or gotten rid of altogether. David Bohm, a physicist who wrote a paper that challenged the current quantum physics paradigm of his day, his paper, the heads of the field, when they got a hold of this, decided that since they could not prove any fault in it, they would collectively ignore it. This is much like Google deciding what search results should be made available, and social media platforms currently censoring, disabling accounts, removing videos, and other content that goes against the acceptable narrative. Let me ask you something. When you were born, do you think you thought, well, I'm alive now, but I'm only as alive as the experts say I can be, and the world is exactly as they say it is. Therefore, there's no point in asking questions or exploring or listening to my own inner guidance because it's already taken care of by those experts who obviously are doing this for my own good. Do you think this way now? If you do not think this way, do you subconsciously see life this way? Look at your reactions and responses to your daily life. What is guiding that? Whose thoughts make up your world? Where did those thoughts originate? Did you examine and investigate your thoughts? The other issue I want to address here ties in with scientism, and this is intolerance. I bring this in because scientism is a key instigator of intolerance. Intolerance is based on believing that certain people, words, actions, or ideas are fixed, that they have an immutable existence. This is based on the illusion of a totally objective reality. Look more closely. None of those things are immutable or fixed. They are all dynamic and subjective. Yet, many people are being guided to believe otherwise, and this is creating intense polarization. This polarization leaves absolutely no space for receptivity, for open listening, for being present fully in the moment and capable of truly seeing reality. It puts a blindfold over every interaction, preventing true perception. This is the trick of scientism. This is the con man's game. The con man will make you believe that you are lacking, that there is a problem. He alone has the answer to this problem. And of course, he will use truths and persuasive, charismatic language to get you believing in his version of reality. He will convince you that what he offers is for the benefit of everyone, and that anyone who disagrees is ill informed, biased, or just a bad person. Because, let's face it, if we don't address these problems, we're all doomed to hell. How could anyone want that kind of result? Don't you love your fellow human? Don't you love the planet? Well, then, we must do as the con man says. His solution sounds so good. There is inherent polarization in the con man's game, and the key is to begin by disempowering the individual. Disempowerment is a crafty game, but it is proven time and again to be an effective one. Why would I disempower you? To create a desire that predictably wants what I will offer. I already have the story and the solution lined up. You will without doubt adopt the language I have set up, the new buzzwords that will spread far and wide and be adopted massively on a global scale. I don't need to convince everyone. I only need to convince persons who are reputable, trusted individuals who already influence many individuals. And for anyone who finds fault in my game, let us publicly shame them and make them outcast. If we have to revert to violence, then it is acceptable because we are on the side of right. What we are facing today is the final push in a long term chess game to put scientism at the top as the one global religion, ruled by a one world government, run by unelected experts, and personal freedoms limited to what the experts deem is essential or acceptable. Yes, you have freedom of speech, but only the speech we deem is acceptable. And of course, we can override any individual freedoms when we deem it necessary, and we do not need to provide proof behind our reasoning. Trust the science. Is this the kind of world you want to live in? How are you liking it so far? Because I can tell you now, the rise of scientism will destroy science. What are you alive for?